To help you connect a little bit more with Rami's story, I'm going to start actually with October 7th also, then get into a little more. First of all, my name is Avi Abelo, grew up in New York City, made Aliyah with my family when I was 16. Baruch Hashem, my wife and I live with our 4 boys in the Judean hills. We're proud resettlers in the community of Efrat. We're in between Bethlehem and Hebron. From our porch, we overlook Beit Lechem, the fields of Ruth, Naomi, and King David, from the story of Ruth on Shavuot, and we see Har HaBayit in the background, the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. We're blessed living the Jewish dream of thousands and thousands of years. October 7th morning, Simchat Torah, I got up to go to shul. Actually, I wasn't even up yet. My wife wakes me up. She goes, Avi, did you hear that? I'm like, hear what? And then 2 minutes later, she shakes me again. I go, Avi, did you hear that? And then I heard it. We heard the booms. This is around 8 o'clock in the morning in the Judean hills. We're nowhere near the Gaza Strip. I'm like, oh my God, something's going on. I get dressed to go to shul, take my talit, walk outside my building. Right outside my building, I see a friend on his phone. He looks up at me. He goes, Avi, we're at war. Hamas is shooting rockets all across the country. Hamas has infiltrated his communities. This is 8 o'clock in the morning. I ran back home. I told my wife, told my kids, guys, we're at war. Something's going on. My parents live down the hill. I say, before I go to synagogue, I want to run and check on my parents, make sure they're in the safe room, because rockets are coming all over the country. We're getting it in our area as well. Thank God I was in my parents' house when more rockets came in our area. They were in their safe room. I was in the safe room. Then we had to say, so they were okay. Ran back to my house, 5 minutes up the hill. I have to decide, what am I doing for synagogue? It's Simchat Torah. So we all had to stay within 5 minutes, within 30 seconds of our house because rockets are falling. So I can't walk to my regular synagogue 5-minute walk away. Instead, I'm going to go to the synagogue that I'm actually a founder of, which is right outside my building. And I told my kids, my wife, we're going to this synagogue. Get to the synagogue. Most of the synagogues emptied out. Most people have more than a minute walk to their safe rooms. There were around 50 people left in synagogue. We daven, we pray, and then the decision had to be made. What are we doing for the singing and dancing with the Sefer Torah? Because we already knew, 8:30 in the morning, that our people were being massacred on the Gaza border. We were already on our phones. We already were seeing the news. We were already seeing videos. We were seeing what was happening. We're praying in synagogue, knowing we were being massacred, knowing we are at war. So the people in the synagogue were trying to decide, what are we going to do? Are we going to sing and dance with the Torah or not? And the decision was made that we're going to do it. We're going to do one circle of singing and dancing, even though we weren't in the mood, but it's Simchat Torah. We're about celebrating the Torah. We're the Jewish people. We live on. We move on. We're going to do it. That was the most inspirational Simchat Torah, singing and dancing with the Sefer Torah in my life. Again, I'm a proud father of 4 boys. 3 of them were home. 1 of them was in the army at the time. And we were all singing and dancing, and I had mothers came up to me afterwards saying, at first I thought that we shouldn't do this, because it doesn't make sense. We're in war, we're being killed. But she goes, thank God you did it, you lifted up our spirits. Most emotional, uplifting Simchat Torah, because we weren't only dancing out of happiness for being Jews and having the Torah and living in Israel. We were singing and dancing and praying from the deepest places of our soul to God to look after the Jewish people and pray for our soldiers and pray for everyone down south what was going on. And again, I'm already on my phone, waiting to be called up to reserves. My son was out for the weekend from his army. He was already called up to go down south into Gaza. I got called up mincha time, Shabbat afternoon. I was basically on reserves from Simchat Torah for 3 months. And then I started coming abroad to speaking, and that's my new reserve duty for the Jewish people, is coming abroad and speaking and trying to help Jews connect and be inspired by the Jewish spirit today. Now, I want to take a step back from October 7th. Just this Sunday, I was in my community of Efrat, and I was videoing a friend of mine who asked me to video a very, very special event that 500 people came out for. And this event was a dedication of a new Simcha Hall in our community in memory of his wife and 2 daughters who were executed at point-blank range a year ago. And the name might sound familiar to you. It is my friend Leo D., his wife Lucy D., Maya, and Rina, his 2 daughters. That was 1 year ago today. Cholomoid Pesach. They were going up north, driving up to the Kinneret, to the Galil, and they were shot. And his wife and two daughters were shot point-blank range by a terrorist as they were driving up north 1 year ago. Why am I mentioning this to you about videoing this event? Because Leo D. right now is a hero of the Jewish people and all of humanity. He has every reason to stay in bed and never get out of the bed. He lost his wife and 2 of his 5 children. They went from a family of 7 to a family of 4, like that. And he is moving on in life, keeping the memory of his wife and 2 daughters alive. They're all Sefer Torahs being written in the world in their memory. There are people learning Torah all over the world in their memory. There are children being named in their names and keeping the Torah alive and keeping their spirit of happiness and Torah learning alive. And he basically says that he now understands faith. What's emunah? What's faith? Faith is not learning to live with what you don't have. Faith is learning to live with what you have. You're not thinking about what you don't have. And he's moving on. And it's not just my friend Leo D, who was a neighbor. He sits 2 rows on the other side of me in the synagogue. And his wife used to sit next to my wife in the women's section. Then I go back to my other friend. I grew up with him in New York City. We went to elementary school together. His name is Ari Fold. And he was murdered by a terrorist in 2018, going shopping at our local supermarket in Gush Etzion in the Judean Hills. And he used to sit right next to me every day after synagogue. We used to talk. We're both very active for Israel and using our voices to help the Jewish people and get the truth out there about the land of Israel. And what I want to tell you is that despite that I just told you the story of my own personal friends, the D family, the Fool family. I have two families in my synagogue that we lost 2 in this war. One killed on October 7th, a soldier, and another one killed a few weeks later. In my synagogue. We all know a family. The Sterot families all know a family. I wouldn't want to live any other place in the world. I wouldn't want to be a Jew anywhere else in the world. You want to know why? Because we're living in a generation of Jews, the first time in thousands of years, where we have a whole generation of Ramis. We have a whole generation of young Jews who are growing up in their natural habitat as Jews, in our Judean hills, in the Galil, in the Negev, in the places where the stories of the Bible took place, where King David and King Saul and the prophets and the 12 tribes lived, and they're growing up feeling naturally Jewish, not embarrassed about their Judaism, not embarrassed to pick up a gun, not embarrassed to have to defend ourselves and do what's necessary, not embarrassed to walk around with their tzitzit out and with a kippah on their head, and running into the fire. One of the miracles of October 7th, and hardly gets talked about, one of the miracles is that only 1,200 Jews were massacred on October 7th. Why is that a miracle? Because the army didn't show up for hours. And that's a totally different talk. Hours they didn't show up for. So how is it only 1,200? Because they were planning on not only going to Sderot, they were planning on going to Dimona, they were planning on going up to Tel Aviv. They were going to massacre tens of thousands. And it was only 1,200 because hundreds of King David-like modern Jews, like Rami, who were not in the army, they were at home celebrating Simchat Torah, whether religious or not religious, whether they put on a uniform, they didn't put on a uniform, whether they had a gun or they didn't have a gun, they ran down to fight in the kibbutzim and in the moshavim against Hamas, and they stopped Hamas from doing even more damage. And instead of tens of thousands of people massacred, we only had 1,200. And that's because we have thousands, we have tens of thousands of proud Jews today, like Rami, fighting not to defend Israel, not just to defend the Jews in Israel, to defend the whole Jewish people. I like to tell people ask me, Avi, when is this war going to end? Very simply. This war's only going to end when every single person who's evacuated from their home down south, which is close to 100,000 people, and every single Israeli who was evacuated from their home up north, which is close to 100,000 people, return to their homes without any fear that another October 7th is going to happen ever again. And I'm telling you, it's not going to be easy. Because we have a Biden administration trying to stop us from fighting. We have the world trying to stop us from fighting. We have people in Israel who are trying to stop us from fighting. But the Jewish people, we've never been more unified than we are today. So don't listen to the news, don't listen to the headlines. You have more soldiers today wearing tzitzit and wearing kippot and feeling unified. You have more chesed projects, of charity projects, of ultra-Orthodox, traditional, religious, secular, working together, doing projects together, helping each other in Israel more than ever before. There is a feeling, there is an uplifting feeling of unity within the Israeli, Jewish people today in Israel. Do not listen to the news. Do not. The headlines are totally off board. The news items totally off board. You want to feel the true spirit of the Jewish people of Israel today? Come visit. Come on a solidarity mission. Better yet, buy a property in Israel. You're not ready to move yet? Don't move yet. Have a property for your kids, for your grandkids. The Jewish state of Israel is not the present of the Jewish people. The Jewish state of Israel today is the future of the Jewish people. Things change. Things change. I grew up in New York City. Right now, most of all my family lives in Israel. My parents, my uncles, my aunts, my cousins, we all moved to Israel. Guess what? You want to know where our grandparents were? They weren't in Israel. They weren't in New York City. They were somewhere in Europe. And then with those grandparents were probably in different communities in Europe. And their grandparents probably in different communities of Europe. You guys all know Jewish history. You're older than me. Guess what? Your grandkids or their grandkids, they're not going to be in America. America's changing too. Right before our eyes. I mean, everyone can think that Florida is different, because it is. For now, definitely. But no, things change. But what's not going to change is the unbelievable spiritual process that the Jewish people are experiencing today in our holy land of Israel. And you can be part of it, and at least try to be already talking to your kids to be part of it, and your grandkids to be part of it. And if they're in college or about to go to college, the best, cheapest colleges without any anti-Semitism on there are where? In Israel. And they're cheaper. You can come and visit them plenty of times for less than you'd be paying them to go to college here. In any case, folks, anyone who wants to visit, to come to Israel, let me know. It would be a pleasure seeing you there and giving you tours and talking to you. I also have a daily program called The Pulse of Israel. Just go to pulseofisrael.com for a daily video or podcast. It would be a pleasure to have you on board as subscribers. And definitely contact me, email me, tell me you met me here on Singer Island. And I'm Yisrael Chai. Hold on to the spirit and spread it.
We're going to do a first Israel trip as a community, and Avi, we're going to come visit you.
Oh, b'simcha! I'll bring you to the church. You can see the Temple Mount from
now you're talking. L'chaim, everybody.
I am. Pulse of Israel, frontline videos from the Holy Land. Support our work by donating today.